Hey everyone, welcome to the Dare to Care podcast, the podcast where we talk about the inner workings of ministry at Inspire Family Fellowship and community stories within and around the church. If you have any comments, stories, or questions about Inspire or our Dare to Care ministries at any point during our podcast today, feel free to send those questions to me at ty@inspirefamily.org. We also invite you to join us in person at Inspire any Sunday that you're able, 523 North 21st Street in Bismarck, North Dakota. Our Sunday services are at 9:15 and 10:45. Like I said, my name's Ty Farnsworth. I'm the worship coordinator here at Inspire Family Fellowship, joined today by our associate pastor, Rob Pesky.
Hello.
And our special guest, 2 weeks in a row, we're doing former Inspire Youth, Mr. Luke Naslund. How are you doing?
Very good.
Good.
How weird is it to call him
Former youth? It's weird.
That's weird. Because Luke just graduated from high school.
Oh, yeah.
And are you 19 already?
I turned 19 in July.
In July, okay. So you've already been an adult for a while, but just graduated from high school. And tell us, is it Thursday? When do you leave?
I leave Tuesday of this next week.
Tuesday. Tell us where you're going
July
on Tuesday,
24th.
Luke.
I take off for the United States Naval Academy to enroll as a midshipman. So I will I'll get a college degree and gain experience within the Navy, and then I'll be deployed as an officer starting, and I'll have 8 years of service afterwards.
That's crazy.
Very cool.
Yeah.
It's very cool. I'm so impressed and proud, even though I have nothing to do with it. But that's really, really cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, so we wanted to catch you before you left because who knows when we'll see you again. And you've certainly been a staple here at Inspire Family Fellowship. But why don't you tell us a little bit of your story? How did you come to faith? I always tell people, one day you were born, and then a while later you ended up in a room making a podcast. What happened in between to make those two things line up?
I think I've really had a slow-burning Christian faith where both of my parents grew up very religious. My mom was Catholic and my dad was Lutheran starting out, and eventually they both became Lutheran after Shane became Catholic.
Yeah. I think Shane has been on the podcast. Yep. Has Becky been on?
Not yet.
Okay, so if you want Shane's side of the story, go back to Shane's podcast, wherever that was.
Very interesting listen.
Yeah.
I started out going to Charity Lutheran Church in Bismarck, North Dakota. I was born in Wisconsin, but I didn't stay there for too long. And ever since going to Charity Lutheran Church, I've always seen church as a place where I get to hang out with friends, because I always had really good friends to be able to be there with. Obviously, I've known Rob for a very long time.
Yeah.
And Rob's son, Ben,
yeah,
which is a huge benefit.
In fact, your parents have become some of my best friends, and I pretty much blame you for that, because you and Ben were buddies, in the, preschool? I don't know how old you guys were at Charity.
It was at least 6.
Yeah. And, it's one of those things as a parent, and Ty is starting to learn this now, you don't get to pick your friends anymore. Your kids pick your friends because Ben wants to play with Luke, so now I've got to go down to the Naslunds and
you got to deal with Shane.
Hang out with Shane and Becky, and that it could be worse.
Yes.
It could be worse. But anyway, yeah, so you and I have known each other.
For a very long time.
You probably don't remember not knowing me.
I don't. No.
I only barely remember not knowing you, but
bonding over Star Wars.
Oh yeah,
big fan.
Star Wars buddies. Okay, so anyway, your Charity, met some people,
and at Charity, I kind of learned what faith was. I started going there. My parents had a good family friend. His name's Aaron, and he taught some of the Sunday school classes. My parents taught some of the Sunday school classes, and I really started to grasp what faith was. I remember pretty vividly the one day. I think I was probably 6 or 7, that I finally realized that the big screens on the front of the church were the words to the songs they were singing. For the longest time, I had no idea, and one day it just clicked. I could hear the guy singing. I think it was Luke Torkelson.
Yeah.
And he was singing through the microphone, and I was following the words on the screen. I must have been in kindergarten. And I'm like, wait, they line up. And it was this come together moment. I'm like, oh, I'm supposed to be reading them. And
nice.
That was kind of my start to being able to understand what worship was. And the 3 pastors at Charity were very influential. It was a good start to my faith journey.
For sure. So you grew up there for a while, and then you guys were, I think Karsten was on last week, and he talked about, he was at one of the very first Inspire services, and you and Ben were sitting on one side of the room, and he was sitting on the other side of the room. So your family found their way to Inspire somewhere in there.
Yes.
And Ty, help me out here. Your class, Luke, this graduating class was sort of the first class
that went all the way through.
elementary, middle school, high school. Like everyone older than you maybe just caught middle school and high school, and younger there'll be more of those, of course, now. So what was that like, being the pioneers of the Inspire Youth program?
Well, I remember it very vividly that right before I had transferred over to Inspire, they were doing First Communion class, and Ben talking about how wretchedly disgusting salt water mixed with eggs was when he had to eat it for the Seder meal. But it's been a very big transition. I think the largest part of that has been middle school comparative to high school. We caught the tail end of elementary school, as in 4th and 5th grade, and being able to stay there with the youth group. But once we transferred into middle school, I think it was the starting foundation of having Kate, Little, and Harrison as youth group leaders.
What talk about Kate and Harrison and the role they have played in your spiritual formation?
So I don't remember the first year that I had Kate and Harrison as a team for youth group leaders, but we had my friend group and myself had them as youth group leaders 7th and 8th grade year, at least.
Yeah.
And when that happened, it always felt like our class was controlled chaos. I remember being very unruly. We'd talk all the time over Kate. We'd make comments, and we would interject in the lesson. And Kate would always get a little frustrated, never angry, but she was always happy with the chaos. And I think that was something that was very interesting to see, that besides the fact that even though the lesson wasn't going perfectly to plan, and how she was teaching us about the word of the Lord, even though it wasn't perfect, she cared about the students there enough to push past that. And it was really something that was very interesting. Kate and Harrison are kind of a dynamic duo. Kate's the chaos and Harrison's the quiet order.
Yeah, that's
a good way to put it.
For sure. So you got involved in the middle school program. We snuck in a pandemic in there.
It was a big time. I think the majority of what I remember pre-pandemic for youth group was preparing for my first sermon that I ever spoke.
Oh yeah, that's right.
I spoke at the Baymont.
Yeah. Was that the Christmas program thing?
My parents so I've been skiing for a long time. I go with Rob to Red Lodge every once in a while, and now to Bridger Bowl.
Yep.
But whenever we would go to Huff Hills, when my parents and I were first learning to ski, we decided that we would read a book. And the book that my mom decided every time that we would read was The Best Christmas Pageant Ever. And it talks about this group of kids who are put into the Christmas pageant who just don't belong. They're unruly, they don't have any parents at home, but somehow when the Christmas pageant comes together, it's just perfect. And my mom helped me prepare a sermon on it because I wanted to speak. And that was one of the first times, I think, in my life that I realized other people can help you to see a different side of faith. So when I look at people who help to push my ideas of faith, I think my mom is a very important person in that. She grew up Catholic, comparative to Lutheran, and she has some different ideas. I'd go off to different Bible camps, and I'd hear things from other preachers and question her on it. And she would always have a very understanding tone with me and understand that sometimes you don't learn the same things at the same time, but that our main goal in life is to follow Jesus, and that the whole stick of that sermon is understanding that it doesn't matter who you are, you can be a Christian.
Yeah. Man, the number of profound things you just said in like the last sentence, I don't even know which. I was really struck by, we don't all learn the same things at the same time. Like, how much of our Christian walk is like that? You meet somebody who seems like they are just on fire and they know all these things and they can quote Bible verses, and in the meantime that person is maybe struggling with something that you have wrestled with already. And man, okay, I'm gonna think about that. We can keep going, but there's some good parenting right there. Any parents listening, use those lines with your children. Okay, continue on.
It's kind of been a core idea of our whole friend group. And when I say friend group, there's been a strong connection of about 5 guys here at Inspire from that 5th grade group on up. And it's been myself, Ben Pesky, Karsten Peterson, Ben Rolstead, and Aiden Johnson. But the difference is we all come from very different backgrounds. I'm the only person from a different school, but Aiden comes from a very different home. Ben Rolstead comes from a very different home. Each one of us has our own idea and way that we look at things. So whenever we would go out and try to help minister to other people, let's say bring people to church. We all have a very different way of going about it. I remember Ben talking about the first time that he tried to get Hatley Heddle to come to church. And it was, he couldn't convince her, so he just kept telling her. And eventually, after the 1,000th time, she's like, all right, Ben, I'll go to church with you. And now she's a regular at Inspire.
Yeah. And her parents and her sister. And yeah, we have affectionately termed your group of 5 the Jesus bullies because you just unrelentingly
come to church, and eventually they break.
Yeah. Well, and then they stay.
Yeah. It's always a good thing.
Yeah.
It's been, I think my approach has been slightly different at BHS because there's a lot of people that I've met through different activities and sports who, no matter what I tell them, it's their way of thinking is that it doesn't make sense to come to church. And I think with the last couple people I've tried to reach out to, I've really focused on the idea of God as a relationship comparative to the fact that my relationship with the person. So a recent friend of mine who started coming to church is Quentin Wolf. And Ty's known Quentin from a very young age, and he comes from a very logical family. So me and Karsten and Quentin will always sit down and have these very deep, logical conversations about faith. But I think what hits people the hardest, or when I invite people to church, what I think hits people the hardest is the relationship that you feel with God. There's so many things that I can think about. Like, in my life, I like to try to think through why I'm a Christian. But there's parts of my faith that I get hung up on where I can't think through it. It's something that you feel.
Sure. Yeah, that's interesting. Karsten alluded to this in his last week, but this group of 5 of you, and then of course there are other people involved. There's some girls that have been part of this whole experience too. But your class especially have been really strong leaders for our youth program. Karsten talked about starting the coffee shops, and there's countless stories that we can tell about all of you guys and the things you've done and started. I'm curious, did you decide I want to be a leader at church, or is it just how you are?
I think there was a very big moment for the group of us as a team, and it was after our first time going to Camp Wyodak. We were 8th graders, so we had just had an amazing year of youth group with Kate and Harrison. It was kind of like the last year. We had finally, 7th grade was completely unruly, and we learned things, but mostly what we learned is that Harrison and Kate were going to just continue to teach us about Jesus and the Lord. But our 8th grade year, we started to dig into what that meant, how it meant to be, what it meant to be a Christian, why we believe. And by Camp Wyodak that year, it was my first year going, there was one church service. I think it was the 4th day we were there. So you're already tired a little bit. You're a little sleep deprived. And the emotions were run pretty high. And all of us, we walked into this service, and it was about, I don't even remember what the service was, if I'm being honest.
That's okay.
But we got done with the service, and the group of 4 of us, Aiden wasn't yet there, me, Karsten, Pesky, and Rolstead, we said, we need to sit down and find somewhere to talk. And we found this campground at the campground area. It was this campfire that was unlit, and it had these 3 big logs around it and a light pole at the top. And we sat there for the next 2 hours and just talked. And it was a lot about who we were going to be over the next couple of years, because now it was that big shift from being in middle school, being able to understand, yeah, we're here, but in my eyes at least, my brother was a senior, and I didn't really have to do a whole lot of heavy lifting. But what we all kind of decided by the end of that conversation was it's now our turn. Even at a young age, we kind of decided, you know what, if we're going to be good Christians, we have to show people how to be good Christians. And I think one of the big things that all of us really enjoy isn't being leaders, but being representative of the people that we want to be. Because there's certainly times where we're obviously not all perfect, and there's a lot of times where we fall short. But each year then, from that point on, at Camp Wyodak, we would always come back to that same unlit campfire where it feels like we'd get there and we just unload the entire year. You'd have all these things that happen, but at camp there, it felt like you could lay it down, leave it to rest, and have God help you. And I think as a group, we bonded over that moment.
Yeah. Yeah, that's amazing. And I talk to people all the time about calling in life.
Mm-hmm.
And if there's any doubt in your mind that you were called to this place, that should go away instantly. But what you experienced, in my opinion, just hearing the story for the first time, by the way, my son was sitting around the same campfire. I've never heard this story, but anyway.
That's because we don't like to tell it too often.
Well, that's fair. That's fair. I appreciate that. But the Spirit calls us through others. Like, I think a lot of times people think they hear this little voice in their head, or that God speaks to them in some sort of like internal monologue. And I'm not saying he can't do that. He's God. He can do whatever he wants. But over and over, especially in Scripture, you see God speaking to people from outside themselves, sending someone to them that delivers a word from God. And I think it's so cool that I think those campfire talks was the Spirit of God speaking to each of you through each other. And that's the church. Yeah. That's the whole point of this community thing is that. And I just have to imagine, like, what couldn't you accomplish with a group of guys like that who are speaking to each other with God at their back, You
set the world on fire with that.
Yeah, man. And, man, what an amazing experience, especially to have that as an 8th grader. Mm-hmm. I remember having moments like that, maybe like junior year, like, oh, I'm going to be a senior now. I got to take charge. But for 8th graders to say, like, hey, this is our time.
And I think it continued to build. Like, that was where Karsten started to have the idea, you know what, I want to have a place where other people can go and they can hang out and have fun. And he liked to make drinks, and he liked to be able to have people bond together. And that was the same place that Ben started the idea of having a Bible study that would come together. And a lot of the stuff that we did after camp was just within our group. So even though we were leaders, maybe freshman and sophomore year, it felt that a lot of it was set within us as a team.
Yeah.
And that we didn't keep other people strong, but we made sure that group of guys, you didn't falter. Because a lot of times you do need people to help you.
Yeah.
And there are times where we call each other out, but that's needed.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. And there were other good leaders when you were in high school.
Oh, yeah.
Were there some upperclassmen that you felt like helped you or guided you or were examples to you along the way?
I think one of the largest examples would have been my older brother's team of people.
Oh, yeah.
It was, and the main one I would say was Cora.
Oh, yeah. Cora Dietzman.
When I was there for the first time at camp, they were all about to leave.
Mm-hmm.
The seniors all sat there with us, and we had this big circle group, and that had been when they started the mosh pit at church. So everyone was able to come up, but it was always this group of seniors that were able to go up first. And Ernie followed right behind them and was helping them out. But Cora and Bailey were these two people who I felt really led the group. And at that last day of camp, after the last evening service, we sat down as a group inside the chapel because you had church time where it was just the people from your church. And Ernie said, "Seniors, do you want to say anything to the freshmen?" And Cora looked over at all of us guys and she said, "You guys are some of the most kind and respectful people at church that I've ever seen." And that was a really touching moment to me. I think that showed me that other people saw us as a possible example. Because up until that moment, I felt like the seniors didn't really see all the other freshmen or the sophomores. They were a great example, but I felt like we were just a little out of reach.
Mm-hmm.
They're seniors. They're important, and they're people who we're supposed to look up to.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not people we were supposed to be friends with.
Sure.
Interesting.
And after that, when she was able to connect with us, and after our whole group time there, Ernie has a process where each one of the older upperclassmen breaks off with an underclassman and goes and prays with them.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're able to connect with people who are older than you, I think it was able to spark that fire inside of us as an example to be a leader.
Do you think, because you talk about your older brother doing that for you, do you think that's something that both of you collaboratively have done kind of for your sister then, as kind of the next big group coming through? I don't want to discount any of our other grades, but we look at her class as kind of they're a huge group of leaders coming up in our system too.
I think Katrina certainly has seen it as what me and Warren have always tried to do is model what we think is best. And I think sometimes I'm a little overbearing with it. I tell Katrina that she has to wash the dishes. And she's like, "Are you my mom?" Obviously, I'm not.
Oh, you guys are brother and sister.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Got it, yeah.
But she's been able to see us as a group grow. And I think what's been really helpful for her is, like Rob said, just as we've been a group of guys, it's been impactful.
Mm-hmm.
But now that we have new people, such as Danielle, who's came as well and helped out,
Mm-hmm.
and other girls who have also joined the group, I think that's been a huge jump in being able to be role models for more people.
Sure.
I think that has really helped Katrina almost more than me and my brother. As
Sure.
much as we try to model to her, there's some things that as guys we don't get as girls.
Yeah.
Sure.
So I'm going to change gears ever so slightly here.
Totally.
And this might be one of those, we're going to cut this out of the podcast. But are you aware that there is a verb now associated with your name?
Yes.
The youth group calls it naslining, right?
Nazzling.
Nazzling. Okay,
Yes.
nazzling. Okay.
I didn't know this. I'm excited
Yeah.
to hear about
Oh,
this.
yeah.
Because Luke Naslund, but more so than maybe anyone I've ever met, but
Maybe not Shane.
Maybe not Shane, but Shane's gift is different. Maybe
Yeah.
we'll talk about that later. But Luke can talk to anybody on the planet for as long as you want and about anything you want. And anytime you go into a situation, they talk about youth group, and if there's anybody who's ever alone or anyone who's ever, looked like they were uncomfortable with something, Luke would slip in and start nazzling. Did I say it right that
Yep.
time?
Oh, yeah.
What is that? Tell us what that is, or what you're thinking when you do that, or talk about that a little bit if you don't mind.
So it started with us at camp and then me trying to learn everyone's name.
Okay.
Everyone's name that I came in contact with. And Ben Rolstad brought it up. He's like, yeah, it's just like you don't dazzle them, you nazzle them. And I was like, well, that's
we need
just
a T-shirt. We need a T-shirt. Don't dazzle them, nazzle them.
And the whole
man.
idea of it was, I felt like there were a lot of situations in life where people were like socially afraid. You're like, oh, I've never talked to this person before, or they're from a different school, or I don't know who they are.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the biggest part of it, and Karsten started to learn this, I think for a while the guys thought I was really good with names. And it's to the point where I'm not good with names. I'm just willing to accept the fact that if I get your name wrong, I just apologize and move on.
Right.
A lot of it is being able to accept that some things you're not going to get perfect when you have a first conversation with someone.
Yeah.
But what makes it special, or what makes it the ability to talk to people forever, is whenever you sit down to have a conversation, I try to make sure that no matter what the subject is, I show them that I really do care about the subject.
Yeah.
Me and Rob have talked about this. There's a Star Wars game that Rob plays.
Yep.
And he says, I'm the only person in the world that cares. And that is the truth, though. I do truly care about it.
Yeah. Well, I know the truth is you don't care about the game, but you do care about me.
I do care about Rob.
And I appreciate that about you. And so we talk about the game and stuff like that. But I think, again, to have a teenager who is willing to put yourself on the line, risk embarrassment, frankly.
Yeah.
I mean, it's embarrassing when you forget someone's name. I do it all the time, but I'm 40 years old and I'm kind of done being embarrassed, But for a teenager to say, hey, I'm going to take the first step and I'm going to reach out and make you feel comfortable and welcome. And I guarantee in this conversation, I'm going to look worse than you.
Yes.
It gives people a freedom to like say, oh, okay, I fit in here. And man, what a gift that is. And your dad, so the old history, they call it the gift of gab, where you can talk to somebody. And your dad has that and your brother has that. And I think your mom and your sister probably do too. What always strikes me about you, Luke, though, is you always turn that gift towards the other person. I in fact, sometimes, I'll be honest with you, okay, I get frustrated with you, Luke, because I'm trying to ask you about what's going on with you, what's happening in your life, what's your Star Wars video game? I want to know that. And it's like, I can't, because you always turn it back on me. Oh, yeah, whatever. But tell me about your Star Wars. And it's like, no, I want to know about you and your, and you're just so mercilessly investing in others and learning more about them. And you're either going to be a great politician or a great pastor someday because of that. But
when and I'm going to turn this now into a transition. In the Air Force, one of their core principles is service before self, and I don't know if there's a similar principle with the Naval Academy, but you, like Rob was saying, are such an embodiment of selflessness. What called you to the Naval Academy?
Good question.
I think it goes a little bit hand in hand. For the longest time, I wanted to be a rock climber. So, very big transition, right? My entire life, I've sought the idea of adventure. I think
And I've known you your entire life. I have never heard that before. See, this is a perfect
he's always
example.
asking about you.
Exactly. Okay, so I interrupted you
For
again.
a long time, I read bunches of National Geographic books and thought exploration and travel were the things I wanted. But what I started to realize, and this is kind of from my dad, is that when you talk to other people or when you invest in other people, you gain the benefit of that relationship. And the more and more relationships that I felt like I had with people, the more and more I wanted to protect those people. I feel like as much as life is about service to others, I wanted to find a calling that was larger than just myself. And then when I reached out to my community, I felt I wanted a calling larger than my community. And the more and more I'd read about things, and the more I tried to research what I wanted to do. Maybe I wanted to be a biologist or study research. It came back to really the start of it was my grandpa. His name's Dave Charles. He was very poor growing up. He lived in Dickinson, couldn't afford glasses, so at age 6 he plucked duck feathers for 2 years, and then he bought himself a pair of glasses. And his story has always been my reason for joining the Navy, because he couldn't afford college at all. He had just married my grandmother at age 19, and he needed some way to pay for college because he wanted to be an engineer. And he went out to join the Navy. And for him, it was this life-altering shift that led to him being able to build a better life for himself and make a better life for his family. And I always think, what would have happened to me if my grandfather hadn't chose that? So then when I looked into the Naval Academy, the big thing that the whole idea of the Navy is protecting the U.S. from abroad. You're in the water. You're not at home defending it, but you are the arm of the government. And I think the Lord calls us to be his arm, to reach out to other people. So if I'm going to reach out to other people in my spiritual life, I want my calling to be something that reaches beyond just the borders of the United States. I think it's something that's extremely important to me. I think being able to show other people that you care just as much about them as you do yourself, that you'd be willing to lay down your life to protect the better interests of, personally, the best place to live in the world. I know without the protections and freedoms of the government that I have, I would never have the life I do. And I kind of want to pay that back.
Very cool.
Yeah, I don't know what you say after that.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I'm kind of
It ties-
That's
honest
it.
with
I
you.
think thank you.
I'm kind of speechless.
It ties right into a speech that Rob gave that Ben was talking about one time, where you were giving either a graduation speech or a commencement speech, where you said, we've invested a lot into you, and now we want it back.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's a lot of people in life where they get a lot invested into them, and they squander it. Not in a intentional sense. Maybe you live life in a comfortable way, and I think that's great. But I know that there have been a lot of people who have put a lot of time and care into me being raised as a good person, and I want to make sure that I make those people proud. Not for myself, not obviously being in the Naval Academy is a huge goal, but I want to make sure that my grandparents believe of me as a person who they are worthy to call their grandchild. Someone who is able to be respected by other people, not because of what they accomplish, but because of who they give back to.
Very cool.
Wow. I got nothing.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Seriously.
It's a huge goal.
And I will say this, even right now, Naval Academy aside, I who have known you your whole life, I am so proud of you. And I had nothing to do with it. I just got to watch. Like I was.
I'm just the guy who plays music at church.
I was like along for the ride, and but the man you have become is so impressive, and I am so excited to see what else God has in store for you, and what He's going to do with you. And I literally, I think I will sleep better at night knowing Luke Naslund is protecting our borders. For real.
Thank you very much, Rob.
For real. I think the world of the decision you made and the sacrifice, because it's not just going off to college and getting a job on a boat.
Yeah.
You're giving up a lot of other things along the way, and we are truly grateful. And I don't know if we can articulate how grateful we are, but we appreciate it, and we're proud of you. And I pray fervently that you'll be back here someday.
Always.
I know you want to go and do this, but I hope the Navy sends you back, or you finish your service and you're back here at Bismarck with us, because we love you, we love your family, we love your friends, and it's hard to imagine this place without you. It's gonna be different next year.
It will be different
without you. And your people, but the impact you have had on me is huge. The impact you've had on this church is incredible. Your school, your community. You are who God made you to be, and that's pretty cool.
Yeah, you're leaving what, Tuesday?
Yes.
It was, as soon as I found that out, I was like, all right, we need to get him on the podcast.
So when this airs, the day
you'll be
you
gone.
swear in, right?
Really? The 26th?
The Thursday?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes. I'll be at the academy at 6:45
A.M.
a.m.
Which is
I'll wake
5 here.
5:45.
Yeah.
I'll wake up at 5, so
Yeah.
it'll be all good.
Okay, so I'm gonna change the ending of our
Sure.
podcast today. Okay, this is Pastor Rob calling audible.
Sounds
I'm not
great.
gonna close in prayer today, because here's what I want. I want our listeners to stop what you're doing. If that means pulling over the car, if that means pushing pause on the podcast, whatever, I want them to stop today and pray for Luke, specifically, because when you're hearing this, and even if it's a few days after it comes out, it doesn't matter. He's going to be there for a while. I want our listeners to take time to pray for Luke and his family, and I want listeners, I want you to pray for our church and for all the great things the kids are doing, and for these kids that aren't kids anymore, and just for what God is doing. But is that cool?
Yeah,
Can we do that?
absolutely.
Is that fair?
Absolutely. I think
And
so.
I'm not opposed to praying, but let's change it up for one
Sure.
episode.
I like that idea.
So today, you, the listener, you have to pray, okay?
Sounds good to me.
And full disclosure, after we stop recording, Ty and I are going to pray for Luke, because we love you, man, and we can't not pray for you. But
Absolutely.
I'll pray right there with you.
that's how we're going to do this today. All right?
Perfect.
All right.
Well, Luke, thank you so much. It's been an honor to know you and watch you grow through this church. Thank you so much for joining us today. Rob, thank you for helping me out this morning. And to all of you guys listening, and your prayers and your continued support of everything, not just what we do on the podcast, but what we do at this church and for our youth and for the people of this church and the Dare to Care program. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you have a blessed week. If you're interested and have never come before, our Sunday services are at 9:15 and 10:45. Hopefully we'll see you one of these Sundays if we've never seen you before. Otherwise, thank you guys for listening. We appreciate you. We'll see you next Thursday.